Welcome to the TESL Ontario video series. Today I'm going to be talking about starting up when you're teaching online. Now I realize that people have already started the semester and that classrooms are on the go. However, there's always something that I feel I can always incorporate into my teaching, even if I'm in the middle of a semester. Now, the ideas that I've gotten come from this book, 147 Practical Tips for Teaching Online Groups. And the information is not just group oriented, but it's for teaching online. And if you look through the book, there are, as you can see, some of the tips are very short and some of them are rather long. So if you'd like some more information from this book, I will gladly do some more videos, or you can buy the book. I got mine on Amazon, and I think almost everybody lives on Amazon nowadays, but you can probably also get it from Chapters or Indigo, and maybe even from one of your independent booksellers. They may have to order it in because it was published in 2000. So even though it was published a few years ago, it is still very, very good information contained in this little tiny book. So you can either read it for yourself or I can do another video. So without further ado, I'm just going to be talking about setting up and getting started and some of the key things to think about that as we're planning, we don't necessarily remember the information. And, we're thinking about the big picture and sometimes some of the smaller items get lost. So let's turn to the slides. I only have a few of them, but there's some information in here that hopefully you will find helpful. So when we're looking at our slides, as I said, the information in here was taken from the book 147 Practical Tips for Teaching Online Groups, which is from the Essentials of Web-Based Education series. And I give you the information at the very end. So when we're looking at teaching online, there are important things to remember, such as when we're beginning, what is it that we need to think about? So the first one is knowing yourself. Now, a lot of you have probably done a Myers-Briggs test or a True Colors test, or you've even done the multiple intelligences. But if you haven't, it's a good idea to go online and take a look and see what the different types of categories are, because understanding those can help you understand yourself and maybe your students a little bit better. So when I was teaching office admin students at Conestoga, a friend of mine and who does True Colors, she had me run through one of the sessions and figure out what type of person I was. And I found out that my office admin students were very focused on being organized. This was something that was really important to them. And they found that my level of organization wasn't meeting their standards. But by understanding that we both had different standards and our personalities were geared slightly differently, we were able to bridge a gap. So understanding who you are and helping your students understand who they are, or getting to know your students, will help you prepare a little bit better. And then also to understanding what your philosophy of teaching is. So do you like being the sage on the stage? Or do you prefer having a learner-centered classroom? Or do you prefer to have a learning community that you build? It's important to know what your philosophy is, but also be adaptable, because sometimes new ideas may work very well in an online environment that we thought might not work in the classroom. It's also important to learn about and understand the technology that you are using. In the first part of the pandemic, I wasn't having much difficulty with my internet connection, but I've noticed in the last month there have been stability issues. So I got on the phone to find out what was going on. Also, it's important to see if you can sign up for any free online classes so that you can learn how to use your technology better. So do you have to use PowerPoints? And if you do, how can you make them a little bit better? Are you able to use presentation software like Prezi? And how can you use that? Also, how much memory is this going to take up? If you're using it on your computer and you're using something like Google Classroom or Zoom, is this going to wind up with using too much bandwidth or using too much memory? Understanding netiquette in North America and especially Canada is extremely important, and you need to be prepared to teach it to your students. Now, I've provided a link here from albion.com, and these are some of the core rules for netiquette. And as you can see, the first one is remember the human. Remember that we're talking to humans, we're interacting with humans. Following the same behavior online that you would follow in real life, respecting other people's time. The next one, making yourself look good online. This doesn't necessarily mean having to put on makeup and do your hair and wear your best outfit. It can mean just appearing confident, like you know what you're doing. Share your expert knowledge with students and have your students share expert knowledge as well. And the last one I think is very important is being forgiving of other people's mistakes. We often forget to mute our mics or forget to unmute them. So mistakes like this can happen. But you can go through the netiquette with the students. And there is actually a book, Netiquette, written by Virginia Shea. And if you go to this website, you will actually get more information about each of these core rules. It's also a good idea to set up multiple ways to interact with your students. So you can have a sage on the stage part of your class, but you can also have students break up into smaller discussion groups. You can use Microsoft Teams to have them working on documents together. You can also set up a class WhatsApp group. You can do any number of things, but you want to make sure that you are giving your students enough different avenues so that they can be successful. Forming personal relations online can be much more challenging than being in the classroom. However, there are various ways that you can do this. One is using icebreakers. Now, I am not an icebreaker type of person. And so I schedule online office hours with my students, and they come for 5, 10, 15 minutes, and we just have an informal chat, and they tell me a little bit about themselves. You also want to encourage your learners to share their expertise. In one of my classes last semester, I had a computer programmer. I also had a student who was a web designer, and it was very interesting listening to things from their perspective. We all know our students come to us with a wealth of experience, and so we can tap into the learner expertise. It's also important to make sure that you're defining your classroom. And you may need to do this more than once through the semester because everyone is going to have different rules and different sets of expectations. But the first thing you want to remember is that we need to set attainable goals for learners. And during this time in the pandemic, we have to remember that the goals may not be as high as they once were because we have students who are working from home. We have parents who have children who are studying at home. We have the general anxiety around this pandemic. So we want to make sure that the goals are achievable for our students. We can also set up expectations about what they need to do when they're participating online. For example, at my school, students have to have their cameras on, but there are times that that is not necessary. Also, how much are they expected to participate? But you also need to negotiate these norms with your learners. So for example, I build in breaks so that every 40 to 50 minutes, we've got a 10-minute break so that the students can go get a cup of water or a cup of coffee or just stretch. Sometimes I'll even lead a stretch exercise with them. But the students do know that they can leave at other times as well. So for example, if they have children who are learning at home and there is a question, they can disappear for a few minutes. Be accessible, but not dominating online. And you want to make sure that your students aren't dominating as well. You want to make sure that you're sharing the time. And you want to carefully consider your boundaries. How long are you going to work? Are you going to be available after classroom hours? So for my students, I'm available from 8 in the morning until 6 at night because those are the hours that the college is open. After that, I may or may not respond if I get a WhatsApp message at 8 o'clock at night or on the weekend. But my students also know that they can use email. And you want to be clear about the boundaries you're setting for the email as well. The next point I think is very important to remember to apply not only to our students, but also to ourselves and to our fellow faculty members. Be a coach and be a cheerleader. Things are going to go wrong for you and for colleagues. So take the time to reach out. Don't be so hard on yourself either. Accept that mistakes are going to happen. It's a part of life. Last semester, I kept forgetting to turn my mic back on after we were in group sessions. And I would start talking, and the students inevitably would have say, "Teacher, your mic." And it became a joke with my students. And it became a laughing point if my mic was actually on. So roll with it. And remember too that we can always learn from our students and we can learn with our students. Encourage them to share, encourage them to participate. This will help keep them from being bored. It will help keep them focused. It will help keep them so that they are engaged. It is important too to let your students know that you expect them to be self-motivated and self-directed. So you need to discuss your requirements at the beginning of each class, really. What is your plan? What are you going to be doing? What do you expect of them? Another thing to help your students, especially in this time of uncertainty, is to have your students create a calendar, or you can create a learning contract with your students and have them create a weekly schedule. So when do they have classes? When are they going to study? When do they have to do things like prepare meals? Do they have to spend time with family members, either here or abroad? Are they going to have Zoom meetings? Are they going to have Skype meetings? Get them to try to pin down a schedule so that it gives them enough familiarity that they can anchor themselves at this time. You also want to provide the students with maybe more review questions or Kahoot quizzes that they can do to make sure that they're understanding the information, because it can be a lot harder online to actually in a synchronous class to actually admit that you don't know something. But you also need to tell the learners that you expect them to show up and be ready to learn. So that means getting enough sleep, having something to eat before class, having their preparation done. So these are all extremely important for the learners, but we also have to remember that we need to be self-motivated as well, and we need to be self-directed. So we may need to spend a little more time studying the technology and the programs that we're actually using. And we all know that when you use technology, it works really well or it doesn't work. We have those times where you turn on your computer and it will not work. It won't boot up, or your internet is not working, or your camera is not working, or your microphone is not working. So it's important to set up a contingency plan with your students. Let them know what to expect if you don't show up for a class. Provide resources for them in lieu of a class. Maybe let them know that they will receive an email telling them of what they need to do in that class. Providing students with a schedule or a syllabus is really good so that they can work ahead if there are difficulties. Even if they can't get on, at least they know what is being done. I have set up a mailing list through our college Outlook account. And so if I need to get in touch with my students quickly, I can just create a group email and send that off. So it's a little bit of extra work ahead of time, but it will help you in the event that you have difficulties. You also have to understand that students will have these problems as well. So you want to communicate what your expectations are if there are technical issues. So for example, at Conestoga, we have to record our Zoom meetings, and the students are expected to watch the Zoom recording if they haven't been able to make it to class. So you want to make sure that you understand there will be times that technology does not work and that you have something to fall back on if you have an issue. Now, as I said, the resources that I used, I've got the biographical information for or the bibliographic information for the book that I used. Uh, Also, if you're interested in finding out some more about Shay's list of or information for the rules for netiquette, you can find them at albion.com. There's also Google training. So if you are having difficulty with your Google Classroom or any of your Google apps, then you can go to the training. And the Zoom training is also there, and there are actually classes that you can take as well. So I hope this has helped. And if you would, as I said earlier, if you would like some more information, then I will gladly provide that. And I look forward to seeing you again in a month or so. And hang in there, and we will all get through this together.